the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and wow.
I mean, just has your quality of life become much better in the last week?
You mean from playing Pokemon Go?
No, you were playing Pokemon Go before last week. Think of the most life-changing event that happened to you this week. The most life-changing. Like, if there are competitors, you have to pick only one. Which one would it be?
So this is not about Pokemon Go.
This is... It could be? I don't know, did you catch a Pokemon that was life-changing?
I like to think that every one of my Pokemon catches is life changing. Pidgey number 752 is just as important as Pidgey number 1 because they all equally grind down into candy.
Wait, what? So I've never played Pokemon Go before. You catch 700 Pidgeys and you grind them down to candy in this game?
Okay, I mean, grind them down. Like, it hasn't been confirmed that you grind them down. But here's the process. Okay. Yes, you catch tons of Pidgeys and Rattatas because that's...
Right, okay, fine.
They're the EXP fodder.
And then you
right?
turn them into candy? Like, you can, dust them?
Okay, no. In the game, there's a process called transfer, quote, where what you do is you take all these Pidgeys and Rattatas and Caterpies that you've caught, and you, quote, transfer them to the professor. And in
return, you get candy.
He gives you a Pidgey candy or a Caterpie candy. I'm just like, how are you getting these candies, man? There's a seedy underbelly of the Pokemon Ghost, universe that they're trying to hide, but I think most of us know the truth.
That is, I mean, I can see why you think that. But that disturbing thought aside, for those of us in the very small minority of people who do play Hearthstone Arena and do not play Pokemon Go, or are more interested in Hearthstone Arena than Pokemon Go, a big thing happened last week. And it was actually done not by other people, because whenever we say something big happened, it's always done by other people. It's actually done by Blizzard. Blizzard went in and updated the UI for the arena, which has remained pretty much unchanged since launch for 2 years.
Yeah. Yay. I mean,
and if you haven't checked in the arena since this new patch has come in, you will be amazed by how much and how frequently you will know how many games you've won and lost.
Yeah. Also, you face unknown all the time now.
You also face unknown all the time now. They've fully masked who your opponent is, in order to make a bug. Because why would there be a clean update?
Yeah, it's so the new UI change. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of it. It definitely messes up sort of our layout in terms of streaming, right? It's in the lower left-hand corner, and now you have to maneuver your way around, and it's just a little bit awkward.
Okay, but for those of our listeners who are not also streamers and or do not have our unique overlay problems.
Why do I care about other people?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, we'll just then turn the topic back into something that you're more comfortable with. Us. All right. Good. Okay. So, today, after the Lightforge, if you guys don't know, and we're moving on topics now because there's really not that much to talk about for the Arena UI change. Like, the UI changed. And it's good. Despite what Merp says, it's actually a really good change. And I really like it that Blizzard did something, like, for the Arena. That they actually had to, like, have told somebody that you need to go work on something for the Arena quality of life. Which, sure, one change in 2 years is not the biggest thing in the world, but it's a thing. And we like things more than no things. So where we had no things, now we have things, or one thing. It's a pretty big deal. And we may have more things. I'm hoping that more things will come. But now we're going to go on to our second topic, which is about us, because if you don't know, after the Lightforge, when we live stream this, we always play a game of the Arena Coop, and we talk about it at the end. And it's whatever class we're discussing. That's the one we're playing, and we've been doing this now. The Arena Coop was our very first stream, and for the first 6 months of streaming, we did not do anything else. We just did one Arena Coop every week, and we recorded it and put it on YouTube. We streamed it, and then we just ripped the stream onto YouTube, and that's all we did. It was very low effort, and people really picked up on it. and it got a lot of traction. So we are actually about to do Arena Coop number like 90. I think it's number 90, and we've skipped a couple of coops in the middle, but it means that we are at the 2-year anniversary. The Arena Coop was on July 15th, 2014, I believe, the first one.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a Druid, which actually completely by coincidence we are doing Druid again this week. Not scripted at all, complete coincidence. Because as you got like the people who watch the Arena Coop know, we don't get to pick our classes. It's now determined by a very rigid system, and so Druid is actually up now. So what do you have to say about that, Merps? 2 years playing the Hearthstone Arena with me on stream live.
So, wow. There is a lot to be said. Some of it maybe not appropriate for the public. But the first thing I'm gonna say is how inappropriate the name in Arena Coop is now, right? Because you remember the origins of the Arena Coop. We were about chickens. We were about
chickens.
We were all about the chicken.
We're all about wordplay and chickens.
We were all about wordplay, and
Poor
this is
wordplay.
something that people bring up to us all the time as well. They're just like, "Dude, you're pronouncing it wrong. It's co-op. Just say co-op." Like you guys don't know how to say
blame them for
this
thinking that we're pronouncing things wrong?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Fury War Axe. You know.
I swear that's how you're supposed to pronounce that word. Still, I'm not backing down on that.
But yeah, like back then, we thought having a chicken as our mascot would be appropriate, and then we were like, oh, it's a play on words. It's like, coop, that's where you keep chickens, and it's a play on co-op, so we called it the Arena Coop, and we still call it the Coop, except we're all about goats now. We've sort of erased all.
We have not erased all evidence of the chicken. All right, one of our chat emotes, got Coop, is still a chicken. It's not the original chicken. It's the better chicken now, since because that was back in Classic when we had it. So it was the angry chicken, which doesn't look all that angry. Actually, looks lazy and fat, which could be more appropriate. But for our emote, we've always used and it used to be our sub icon too. We've used the chicken that you get from Gnomish Experimenter in GVG. And that one looks much more angry. It looks like furious. It looks like it has no idea what the hell is going on, and it's like flapping about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could sense some rage after, you've been something else your entire life, and then you were just turned into a chicken by the Gnomish Experimenter. So that's
by rage, you mean joy, and more joy. I was gonna say a word, exuberance. Is that a word?
It is a word. Congratulations.
Exuberance, joy, and exuberance.
Anyways,
I didn't really want to take a shot without like checking it because I had a feeling I was about to mispronounce it.
Great feeling. But yes, so the first thing I thought of is just, wow, this name did not, really carry over well. And I guess it's too late. 2 years is a little bit too late to change the name. And by now it's sort of already kind of grandfathered in. So I guess we're
we're not changing it. It's the Arena Coop.
All right.
To my grave, it will be the Arena Coop.
Excellent.
But yeah, so I'll tell a little bit for people who were, because the Lightforge only started a year ago. We're actually running up close to our Lightforge anniversary, the first one. You can tell because we haven't missed a single Lightforge. So episode 53 will be the anniversary. Because that is 53, and there are 52 weeks in a month.
I actually don't remember how many weeks there are in a
in a year, not in a month. There are not 52 weeks in a month.
Go on.
But yeah. So, the Arena Coop originally started 2 years ago as like a way for us to kind of prove that we were actually good arena players. Some people, I think very reasonably, did not necessarily believe we were very good. And we didn't know exactly how good we were because Merps never tracked. I had only been tracking for like a month and a half at that point, and my average at that point before I started the Arena Coop was like 7.1 or 7.2 or something. Playing all classes evenly, but still, it includes a lot of like runs where you're like tired, or runs in which you like, you're just like playing, and like experimental runs. So we thought, how high can we get our record if we were actually for real tryharding all the time, still playing all classes evenly, because that's very important to us. But like, how high can we get that record? And I think by a mix of just like us intensely concentrating and willing it to happen, and a luck, lots of luck, we were actually averaging more than 10 wins per run for like the first like almost 6 months, I think.
Yeah.
Like until GVG hit.
Yeah, and then everything.
Yeah, and then everything kind of went downhill because we started getting like 5 and 6 wins a lot.
Yeah, although how much of that is just sort of like, we got really lucky and then we probably, regression to the mean.
Right. But also GVG, like our overall records weren't like that great in GVG either.
Right. So we've seen our highs and lows, and right now, through all of our runs put together, so we're like after 90 something runs in this series, we're at what, 7.5?
Yeah, I think we're at 7.5.
We're at 7.5 after
like it spikes and it dips.
Yeah.
Like GVG was a huge dip, Classic was a spike, Ode Gods and OE have actually been like on the higher end compared to like TGT and GVG especially.
Yeah, definitely. And it's gotten to be a pretty fun format. Like every single week for this one time, we get together, we play this, and we just see how well we can do.
And we keep a record of it. So a lot of people who are, especially, I get this a lot when I'm reading the comments to our YouTube channel, because we put up all the 12-win runs we get. I get, could you put out some like non-12-win runs? I think those are more educational. And all I have to say is that's what the Arena Coop is for. We don't pick and choose Arena Coops. We put everyone up online. It's all numbered. You can actually go, I actually tweeted this out earlier, Arena Coop #1, which was the lost Arena Coop, because we actually did not put that one up online because it was like Twitch had ate it until the 1-year anniversary of the Arena Coop. So that actually came up much later, but it's the raw, unedited like footage of me fumbling around with my mic, trying to set up a stream, asking people if this is working, being really excited when 1 or 2 people showed up to watch our stream, all there in Arena Coop #1. And like, I actually watched, I skipped around a little, but I watched for like about an hour of Arena Coop 1 before the Lightforge. And it's crazy how much things have changed in 2 years in the arena. Not like just looking at the fact that my camera was in a weird angle, it was a crappier camera, I had no lighting, I had even worse pit stains than I do now, my hair was so bad, I was thinner, Merps had no face for like the first 6 months of the Arena Coop. He was just a voice. I think most people thought he was Jewish. I don't know why. That was just like
that was
something
an overwhelming
that got,
response. It was really strange.
Because we never told anyone Merps was Asian, or anything, really. I think people just knew that he sounded like a guy. And I want to say 2/3 of people probably thought he was Jewish. I have no idea why. Anyway, so watching back on Druid Arena Coop #1 from 2004 in the Classic meta, I actually took down some notes on things that are like just really surprising to me that we were saying, because we still do the same thing, right? We like try to be educational, we talk through our plays, and we like debate key plays and things like that. But key things that I really noticed is opponents were worse. They were just straight up worse. They drafted worse decks, they played in weird ways, there were multiple people who tried to hero power every turn. Like, you just can't deny the fact, if you were looking at like footage from 2 years ago and footage now, that the average player in the Hearthstone arena, even at like 0 wins or like at 1 loss, are a lot better than they were back then.
Yeah, definitely. And you could chalk it up to overall experience, or it's just sort of casual players leaving the game, or just more resources out there, right? I like to think that we have sort of contributed to the barrier of entry being a little bit lower. There's all these guides, and there's, in addition to us, there's lots and lots of streamers who really provide the educational tools to help people succeed in the arena.
And I'll just keep going this. I'm going to keep reading more observations and you can respond to that.
Sure.
Okay. There were a few times in the plays where I noticed, and this was hilarious. When I first heard it, I was like, "Oh my god!" I was so like, I was like patting my old self on the head, being like, "That was cute." And then it happened like a few more times, and I was like, "Huh, I guess that was just a thing that we did that I didn't even think about," which is that when you only had 2 removals in your hand, I'm gonna say that again. When you only had 2 removals in your hand, just 2, not like 3 or 4. I was a bit hesitant at using one of them because I would only be left with 1.
There you go.
That's how much initiative was in the game back then. It's not like now where you have 1 card with initiative and you hold on to it for dear life. And if you don't have any cards with initiative, you're like, that's kind of a normal hand. Back then, if you only had 1 card with initiative, that was your last lifeline. Like, you do not want to use that card, but more importantly, you don't even want to be in that situation where you only have 1 card. Because if you use it and the next turn they come back, what do, right? Do you just lose?
And it was so easy to get those decks with like 4 swipes in it, right? Just 4 swipes, a couple wraths.
I was so, like, I made fun of one of our opponents so hard for playing into a swipe. And now, the same thing, I would have, like, barely acknowledged it. I was like, alright, so he's playing into the swipe. Back then, I was like, who is this idiot? He has to freaking respect me and my swipe, because I'm a druid. And I'm expected to have, like, 2 swipes in the deck. And now it's like, yeah, I can see why he's not respecting the swipe. I'd probably do the same.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. Like, these days, I just, on turn 7... I think 80% of the time I'm like, I can't or I won't play around the Flame Strike, right? Mm-hmm. And then I just don't. Sometimes the deck doesn't allow me to or whatever. But that was unheard of before. And just, you had to respect the swipe. You had to respect the consecration, right? Mm-hmm. And also now, like after they've used the first Flame Strike, you really just have to say, okay, I cannot possibly play around the second Flame Strike, right? I just have to reload, and then if he Flame Strikes me again, good for you. Just could not, like, there was
because it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
And it was back then. Like, that's another observation we're going on with this, is that you just played around everything back then. Like, turn 4 comes along, it's like, oh, he could play a Yeti, he could play a 3-5. Like, we don't say that anymore, because he could do anything. Like, there was not even a Lost Hall Strider back then. Like, you had to play a Panda to get a 5-4 onto the board on turn 4, which was a likely scenario because Pandas were not that bad because it was such a card advantage game. But, like, you listed a whole bunch of random neutral cards, and you were, like, sort of vaguely playing around each of them at, like, every single turn. And that's weird to see, because we definitely don't do that now. And you would always play around, always play around the +2 damage because of the Dark Iron Dwarf and the Abusive Sergeant.
Well, not so much the Abusive Sergeant, right? That was a card that was not as highly rated as it wasn't
as highly rated, but it was still seen.
It was still seen. Most of the time you played around the 2 damage just because of Dark Iron Dwarf. Yeah. Everyone had a few of them.
right. Like, everyone has at least one of those in their deck. Okay. And then... so opponents also ran out of cards a lot. Like, the number of games... Okay, so one, we were a druid. We did have an Ancient of Lore. Like, it was a slow druid. But the number of games where we won because we had, like, 3 or more cards in our hand and our opponents had 0 was an absurd number. Like, that's how we won almost every game with that run. And that was something that you could do back then, like, pretty reliably. We didn't have, like, a terribly slow deck either, but we just played well on the board, got our card advantage, and then ended with just, like, way more cards than our opponent. So that, we would have, like, 15 to 20 health and be totally safe. Our opponents would have, like, 15 to 20 health, and then we would have, like, a full board with a bunch of cards in our hands, and they'd have nothing, right? And then it's, like, a fully dominant victory. And that would happen, like, again and again and again, because you would play on the board well. And every time, because we were always more tempo players than I think people were at the time. So we would say things like, we had, like, 4... There's this one play where there were 4 minions on the board, and our opponent had 2. One had a taunt. And I cleared one, the one with the taunt, and then attacked face with the other 3 to bring the opponent down to 8 health. And I was like, see, in this case, you should attack face rather than continue to trade. and that was like a point to be made. That was like something that needed to be said. That was like something that I feel like if I didn't say it, people would question my decision.
That's so crazy. But yeah, that was really how people played back then. It was like everyone was trying to attrition you down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because everyone had attrition decks. It was just like that's how to win.
Yep.
You get the other guy to run out of options, and then you go face.
Yep.
Right?
Because the other guy can't recover, and so you're not afraid when you're playing the card advantage game and you have the board. Or like these days, your opponent could do random things to flip the board on you. Back then, you knew exactly what they could do to flip the board on you, and so if you just played around all of that and prevented it, you can continuously keep the board and continuously pile up your card advantage. And so there was just no incentive to going face.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's my observations from Arena Coop #1 Druid. If you watch the Arena Coop and you've never seen Arena Coop #1, you should go and watch it. Not the whole thing, but like just click through, like watch a game or two, just to see how things were 2 years ago. I think like so much has changed, so much. And I think I don't know. I really enjoyed the whole Arena Coop experiment and the whole trying to teach the arena from two perspectives. I thought that experiment kind of worked out really well, and it's a good archive. It's a good archive to kind of just like put onto the side if you haven't watched all of them yet, because we really do. We try to be very educational in those streams, and we try to talk about the meta, and we talk about all the decision making, and in a game that's 100% about decision making, that's invaluable, I think.
Yep. All right, so I have a few, I guess, reflection questions lined up. Should I ask them now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Ask them now. So if you guys are wondering why we're talking so much about like our own stuff in this Lightforge, we normally just kind of like talk a little bit, very little about it before we move on. It's because Blizzard, although they have given us a great UI change, has still not delivered us any information about this expansion. And the OG meta has really been talked to death. Like when we started the Lightforge, people said, there is no way you can talk for an hour about the arena every week. You will run out of stuff to talk about very quickly. This is not even, you better have like a guest on every single week. And I said, no, I think me and Merps could do it. I think we have a lot to say about the arena. I don't think things will get stale or anything. And they were wrong, and we were right until this episode. When I'm like, all right, we've talked the OG to death, right? The OG meta's been talked to death. We know what's going on. We know how to win. We've conveyed the message to you, and we've emphasized on certain points. We've delved deep into several basic fundamental arena skill areas. We've gone through all of that. We need to speculate on the next expansion now, and Blizzard has failed us. So hopefully Blizzard will announce next week, or else I don't know. Maybe we should probably get a guest next week. Actually, that'll be nice.
Stall tactics until the expansion.
Stall tactics. Yeah. But for this is going to be focused on the Arena Coop, and then we'll talk very in depth about the Druid in particular in the second half of this.
All right, sounds good. So basically, I've been thinking back, and I tend to have a pretty good memory with this stuff, but I want to ask about sort of what do you think was like sort of the best Arena Coop moment and also the worst Arena Coop moment, and I'll even let you interpret what those mean. I guess, as in best and worst.
I think the worst Arena Coop moment, or like the first like 3 worst Arena Coop moments, were probably all like Rogue runs, because Rogue is both of our pretty good classes back then and has remained our one of our top classes. And every time we would start with something like, okay, and now we're gonna show you guys how we play Rogue, and it would end 5 wins. Like every time. This is during the era of the 10+ win rate, which was done in spite of Rogue, which was done with all the other classes. Like Priest was holding it up with like 10 wins per run, right? Hunter was getting 12, like that was what was happening, and Rogue was just getting 5, 6, 5, or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers. And it was I remember feeling really bad, because I'm like, no, I swear we know how to play Rogue. I swear we don't just randomly suck at Rogue and are good at all the other classes. And and we would I think we would make good points, but it just wouldn't come together on the co-op.
Yeah. So my nomination for worst Coop moment, and I actually remember this pretty vividly. It was run number 25. You guys just need to watch the
25.
Okay. It was a Paladin run. Run number 25.
Is this GVG yet?
I don't remember exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was GVG.
I think it's GVG. It's got to be GVG because it was good until GVG. So if you're talking about an awful moment, it was probably GVG.
Well, okay. So, spoiler: we ended up at 11 wins, and we were at 11-2, and we were facing this mage. It's a game in which we both went into fatigue. So we lost when both players were into fatigue because his last two cards were Sunwalker to prevent lethal on our end, and then an MC Tech to steal the only minion that he.
I don't even remember this.
To prevent
really?
lethal. And at the end, we lost with him at 1 HP and us dying to exact fatigue lethal.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
I do not even remember this. I must have wiped this from my memory.
So it was 11-2, top deck to prevent lethal, and at the end, when the fatigue, we went into fatigue for 3 turns back and forth, and after all the damage was up, it was 11-2. We lost when our opponent had 1 HP, and then we took 9 damage to the face, leaving us at 3, and we took 3 fatigue damage to lose. That was that freaking close, man.
Wow. So that was our GVG Arena Coop experience. You can check if you want an easy way to look at our record for the Arena Coop, you can, there's a link to it on our main Twitch page, twitch.tv/grinning, and you just click on it. We have a spreadsheet that we keep all nice and titty that we've had since pretty much the very beginning.
Yeah.
And you can just see it hits GVG and it just tanks for a while. We averaged 10 and then we started averaging 6.
That was definitely a really sad moment.
Yeah.
But very, very epic viewing. I think it was one of the longest Arena Coops that we've ever had, just because it.
Yeah.
We had
and that's one of the things I like about the Arena Coop. They're so long because we talked through so many things that they're probably a run is almost an hour longer than a typical run.
Yeah. And then for best, I think we've had a few sort of good moments. The one I really liked was us needing Doomsayer for an out, identifying it, and then killing off the Shredder. We got the Doomsayer, and then going to 12 wins because of it. I just don't remember the exact run. I try to find it, but we do have a lot of runs, and I don't remember exactly which one it was. So that was a pretty good moment. But man,
I like the moments in which things line up. And you're talking, and you it allows us to actually make a really good play that I would wager 90% or more of people would make the another play, and that our play, after you think about it, becomes almost certainly right. Those cases, because it involves setup, right? You can't build it.
Sure, yeah.
And it only happens it probably doesn't even happen once every run, but when it does happen. And one of us makes a really good call or a really good play, I'm there, that's a teaching moment. That's a teaching moment right there that we couldn't have even scripted better. I love it when those things come up.
Yeah, and then there's also that time, I don't know, I think it was a coup, but we missed lethal and we actually lost because of it.
I'm sure that happened more than once. I'm sure that's not the only. I'm sure it didn't just happen once out of 90 runs that we missed lethal once and lost the game because of it.
I think it's only happened once.
Really?
We lost the game because of it, though.
Huh.
Yeah. We miscounted a buff on a Corcron Elite, so we thought we were 1 off. When instead we were, we had lethal, and then our opponent taunted up after that, and then just killed us. Oh man!
All right. Okay. I think that's enough Coop reminiscing. Let's move on to a question from the GOAT.
All right, question from the GOAT. It's kind of simple. It's on the same sort of, I guess, timeline, or the same category. Basically, what advice would you give ADWCTA and Merps from 2 years ago?
Oh, so when we were just starting the Coop. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, basically we started the Coop when I said, "Hey, let's just stream like once every weekend. It's not going to be like a big deal or anything, and then it'll be cool and it'll like help people who like care that much about the arena to watch random people who claim they're good, like and listen to all of their decision making processes. And I thought it would be good to have like a back and forth discussion from it, and then people can like kind of comment on it. Maybe we can learn something as well. But otherwise, it will at least be like teaching the community, the like really hardcore portion of the community that will actually go out and come find like us. And there's not like a great expectations for it, but I think what I would have told us is to kind of like shape up faster on the technical side, because it really did start off as a, I don't really care if who was really finding us. I'll put it out there. I'll like make the posts about it, and if people are finding us, that's great. And only I think like 10 weeks in, 12 weeks in, when we were actually getting like 50 people watching us concurrently on Twitch, that I was like, oh crap, all right, I should probably like be using a better microphone than my webcam mic, and like I should probably have a light so people can actually see my face. So I like, just on the streaming side, I think there's a lot of disbelief, right? When you're starting doing something like this, that people would actually be interested, or that a decent number of people would actually be interested, because there's so many options, there's so much good content out there, right? Like, what's another person or two people playing the arena? There's more constructed than arena, but still you have like at least 5 like well-known arena streamers out there at the time. But even if you're thinking like that, if the signs are starting to point that it's picking up, I think my advice to myself would be to ramp it up quicker, and to kind of trust in yourself.
Yeah, my advice would be pretty similar. The only thing I would add is I'd probably tell myself from 2 years ago that the lottery winning numbers from specific dates. I would probably add that in. You don't seem to be interested in wealth. You just seem to be interested in arena knowledge. So I guess we have that difference.
Okay. I thought this question was focused on something relating to the arena in our stream.
Well, yeah,
but,
I mean,
but if we're going
to,
like just purely historical time jumping things, I can. There's a lot of things I would do, given the knowledge that I have in the last 2 years.
It's like, do not trust Jenny. Do not eat that thing on this date. You will regret it. Do not walk into that room and say yes. That was a bad choice.
Exactly. I'm playing Zero Time Dilemma right now, actually. Which, if you guys, that's like the end of the trilogy of 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, which were like some of the best games ever released on like the DS and 3DS. Like, I think it may be, in my opinion, like the best game ever released on DS and 3DS, respectively. So I'm playing this one on my PC, and there's a lot of time travel stuff. So I have like a lot of ideas in my head what I want to do if I can actually do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so question from the Go is brought to you by our patrons, patreon.com/grinninggoat. July's patrons are 4P Burger 1996, Talon, Paul H, Ingo, Terrence B, and Ugbog. Thank you guys so much. The Patreon still means a lot to us. We do have one sponsor now, so this is no longer like the sole source of funding, but it still really lets us do what we want to do with the Grinning Goat. Like, we'll be upgrading our computers in the later half of July or early August again, and then we'll be going to TwitchCon and BlizzCon, or Merps will be going to TwitchCon, I'll be going to BlizzCon, and all of this is only made possible by your support. So patreon.com/grinninggoat. Once again, thank you to all of our patrons. Okay, let's talk about Druid. Let's talk about very, very specific in this meta things about the Druid, rather than vague historical things about Arena Coop and co-ops and and all that. Card good, bad. Let's start there. I picked 2 Druid cards for this week's card good, bad.
Sure.
And they're similar, but they're different. And I think it's going to help the understanding of the arena for our listeners to like fully appreciate their differences. Well, it's not a Druid specific thing, but this is a good like teaching moment, I think. Mark of Yasharaj, which we rate at a 66, and Wildwalker, which we rate at a 62.
Yep. So, it seems like you have some sort of, I guess, plan with this. So I'm gonna let you just go first.
Okay. So I'm just gonna rant for a bit.
Okay. Yeah. Do that.
Okay. Okay. So I think the first thing you do when you look at these 2 cards is you notice they're both beast synergies, right? They're like the big beast synergies that is not Druid of the Fang, and Druid of the Fang has a cost. Druid of the Fang is a 5 mana 4/4. These are kind of costless, right? Like Mark of Yasharaj +2/+2 buff, that's good. Wildwalker is a 4/4 for 4 mana, it's pretty good. If we were to rate each of those cards separately without the beast buff, they'd probably both be a 46. They'd probably both be exactly a 46, actually. So then, with these beast synergies, they get bumped up quite a bit, and I think you guys, can understand why they get bumped up so much, because they're kind of game changing, and if you've played with them or you've seen them played against you, you know that these are not things you want to see. You kind of just hang your head and go like, the Druid hit their beast synergies, and it's really one of the few ways Druid wins games now consistently, because we'll talk about this when we get to Class Talk Druid. Druid is not in a good place. They don't have powerful cards, and one of the only things Blizzard's helped them out with is that they gave them like these beast synergies. So the question, I think the really interesting question is, why is Mark of Yasharaj higher? Like, Merps, would you rather have +3 on a minion, or would you rather have an extra card? Like a free +3 on a minion or an extra card?
I mean, in today's world, it's pretty tough. For me, it's pretty even, but I could definitely see why Mark of Yasharaj is higher, right? I mean, because you can't just say it's +3 on a minion, because it's +3 on a minion that
has charge for the most part,
right?
Like unless you're playing way later.
Yeah, unless you're playing it like super, into the mid game or into the late game. But man, in today's sort of card advantage meta, that extra card is really good, and it's a sort of conditional card, but only conditional as in, like there's this bonus, right? There's this really good bonus of drawing a card, but you could forego it by just putting it onto a non-beast, right? And you still get some value out of it because you get a +2/+2.
No, so that's about the same. I'm just looking strictly at the bonus because they're triggered by like very similar things, right? Like getting a card and getting +3 health on a minion is about the same thing in terms of what you would expect its value to be. Approximately the same thing. Now, Mark of Yasharaj is ranked higher. I think we should think of it more that Wildwalker is ranked lower, because in the situations that you would play Mark of Yasharaj is that it's a card you mostly hold, and then you buff something to get an effect. That's a far more situational card at its basis than a 4/4 minion. You play a 4/4 minion if you need to on turn 4. You just throw it onto the board later on if you need to fill in some of your mana. You just play that card. So part of the original value of the 4/4 comes from the fact that it is a non-situational card. Whereas a +2/+2 buff was already a situational card. So the percent chance that you want to play a Mark of Yasharaj, a +2/+2 buff on this turn, is lower anyway. So the percent chance that you would hold it until you get a good scenario was higher anyway, as compared to the Wildwalker. So when you add an additional situationalness upon both of these, which is that you have a buff that only triggers if there's a beast on the board, it negatively affects your less situational card more, because it's making a higher percentage of its use cases be more it's affecting a higher percentage of your use cases.
Okay. So the fact that it's a little bit more situational actually raises its expected value, kind of.
Exactly, because it was already built in. when we rated it at 46 if it were just a +2/+2 regular buff. So that already considers the fact that like half the time you can't really use it well. So then you're asking yourself, well, can I hold this card for the beast synergy? And the answer is yeah, kinda. Like you could because you're gonna hold it half the time anyway, right?
Right.
And then just you have to like maybe like half the time after that you will still have to hold it here or whatever percentage, right? But the same percentage is a much bigger percentage when it comes to of effect when it comes to the 4/4 minion, because you want to play that card much more frequently. So can you hold it? You don't really want to at that point, and it's eating into its original base value, this additional ability, even if both of these abilities have pretty similar values on their face.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I see both of these cards as pretty much the same, and we scored it pretty much the same as well. I haven't really thought about that situationalness though, but I think both of these cards sort of like trend towards the Druid almost needing beasts, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the thing I've seen recently in Druid decks. If you don't have a beast Druid deck, you better have lots of swipes or just these power cards, right? Otherwise, I don't think you win as Druid unless you have a beast deck, which is weird. It's just so strange now that you kind of need beast Druid in order to succeed, because the power level of the top classes has increased so much with stuff like Shadow Strike, with stuff like Twilight Flamecallers and what is it, Faceless Summoners, all of this stuff, and it just seems like Druids now, in order to match that power, they need synergy in order to actually match that power.
Yep. It's true. And that was almost the antithesis of a Druid back in the day.
Right.
Because it was choose one. It was the most flexible class on paper.
Yeah.
And like a very normal class that just had flexibility to do normal things. Like nothing was overpowered, but also nothing was underpowered, and you try to use your flexibility creatively as much as you can given the limited working space of the Druid. And so it made it a very fundamentals class. Like the better you are at your fundamentals, the better you were with Druid. And so good players were generally very good with Druid. Nowadays, it's a little less that way, like you said, because now you have some synergies. Now there's more ways to flip the board on very normal classes. And then I guess we're moving on into class talk Druid here, but like the OG meta also, we talked about this before the last time we talked about Druid in the OG meta. A lot of classes are looking like how the Druid used to look, how the classical Druid looked, of like having a lot of big things later on. And so a lot of decks that go far are built to kind of counter that already. So you're losing out on that. And I wanna go back to the card good bad thing for like just one more refresher of kind of my concept. I just want to make sure I explained it as well as I can before we kind of leave this topic, because I don't really want to cover it again. It's a bit of a deeper concept, but if you understand why that's happening, you can start applying it in your actual gameplay as well as your drafting. Because depending on how situational certain cards are, your use cases for them, your expected use cases for them in your deck becomes very different, and so they serve different functions in the deck, even if they're the same card. A way to think about it is, how long after seeing this card in your hand are you expected to actually play this card? And the shorter that period of time is, generally the more flexible the card is and the better the card is, but also it means any additional ability attached to that card actually has a greater cost on the original value of the card. On the other hand, cards that you like a Pyroblast that you would just kind of hold forever, if you add an extra ability onto that card, it doesn't lower the ability as much, because you don't have a downward drag that's forcing you to kind of like play this card on inopportune moments for the sake of for the ability, like from the perspective of the ability, so that you can more play to the ability itself, because the other part, the other more situational part was not going to be played for a while anyway. And this is, of course, if the abilities are either neutral or synergistic. You can also have the case where the ability is like actually contrary to the initial status of the card, in which case it wouldn't work this way. But we won't go into that. For things like drawing cards or like adding tempo, they're all pretty basic and neutral. Okay, so class talk Druid. Any more final words on this before we actually start the Arena Coop with the Druids?
I don't think there's much to add. First of all, I'm slightly confused, but that might just be because of lack of sleep and also the fact that, you know, I just want to get out there and catch Pokemon. But
Pokemon taking over your life, man.
I know. Yeah, Druid is just not in a good spot right now. We've gone through this before, but man,
yeah, like how do you play Druid now? I think last time I was saying we should play Druid a bit faster, but like I've played more Druids since then, and the faster one really hasn't been working.
No,
like it honestly has not been working, even if I have Savage Roar.
Well, because Druid doesn't have the tools, right? You basically have to have Savage Roar, and even then, like things have to go your way.
Yeah, I mean, it has the tools. It has Savage Roar. It has Power of the Wild. It has like multi buffs. What am I thinking of? It has one more.
What?
Multi-buff. Something that buffs like a lot of tokens.
Power of the Wild?
Yeah, I said Power of the Wild. I think there was one more. Was there not one more? Am I making
Wisp
that up?
of the Old Gods.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm making this up.
I don't know.
Okay, Soul of the Forest, but that's not what I was thinking of.
No. But, okay, so the thing with Druid is that I think nowadays, when games are going longer, first of all, you know, they're not the soul class with big bad taunts, right?
Right. Everyone has big bad taunts.
And also, their hero power is a real liability in the late game.
Yeah,
That's
times... what I've noticed. Because before, I rely on the hero power to deal some extra damage to the face if I needed to. Now, that's like happening less than half the time because your opponent just taunts. Your opponent always just taunts.
Your opponent taunts, and also, look, Mage hero power is slow, but Mage can play that grind out game because it doesn't take damage when you ping something,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Rogue takes damage, but Rogue, when you use it in the early and mid game, you win, like, you still have the extra dagger charge, so it's 2 damage, and you save up that damage as well, which is fantastic. Druid, that 1 extra armor gets you nothing, so it's just as slow as a Mage, but if you're hero powering consistently in the mid to late game, suddenly, you know, over the span of 3 turns, you've just lost like 15 health, and they're just going to kill you, so...
Yep. Although, to be fair, you know, I think Blizzard fully understands that Druid is in a precarious position right now, which is why they buffed the Druid over last week with the patch. And Sithilith Swarmer, if you didn't know, is now a beast, which is wonderful for the Druid because Druid is a beast class and Druid can attack whenever it wants. I say this only half-jokingly because it actually does make it pretty damn good for a Druid. And it was already a very playable card for a Druid, unlike other classes, because it is one of only 2 classes that can attack whenever it wants. So that is a slight buff to the Druid. And I don't know, maybe we'll be able to draft the Sithilith Swarmer today and have some good luck with it. Sithilith Swarmer, it's a 3/5 for 3 mana. That's not bad at all. And it stays on the board even if you don't attack with it every turn.
Yep.
So that's it for the Druid, and we will hopefully duplicate. Just spoiler alert: Arena Coop won when 10 wins, so we will hopefully be able to duplicate that record, which will make me very happy for the 2nd anniversary of the Arena Coop today, because I have not been doing that well with Druid. All right, that's it. That's it from us. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. See you guys.
And next week, we will talk about the upcoming expansion, which will be announced next week. Right, Blizzard? Right, Blizzard?
I'm not Blizzard, but yes. Yes, indeed. We say it enough times, and we just believe it'll happen.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.